Welcome to more World of Warplanes content from the Noble Queue, and in this video I'm going to take a close look at the Tier 5 American multirole fighter, the F4F Wildcat. Before we start, I'd like to thank community member Patchouli Knowledge for requesting the video on this aircraft. Here's the F4F Wildcat on the tarmac outside my hangar. Did I really eat all of that cake? What a shame. Anyway, turning back to the aircraft, it's got a special livery on it, clearly RAF markings rather than anything American. And what we're going to do in this video, we're going to show you two battles. The first one is what I would call typical, showing a significant contribution to a team effort, and what you should be aiming for usually. And the second one is very much atypical, and really rather exceptional. So what we'll do next is we'll look at the numbers on this aircraft, and if you don't want to look at a spreadsheet as usual, use the links below the video to skip ahead to another section. So here's my spreadsheet for the F4F Wildcat and all of the other Tier 5 multiroles. There are 9 in total, as you can see if I just scroll sideways. Quickly, how the spreadsheet works: the F4F is in columns C and D. All the information is there, as you can see. Each of the other multiroles also occupies 2 columns progressively to the right. Down the left you can see the key characteristics of the aircraft. These are the ones that you can see in the hangar UI, and then in the table is the body of the information that we need to look at when studying the aircraft. Configuration in every case was stock. Ordnance where available was mounted, equipment was taken off the aircraft, the pilot was sent back to the barracks, and the modules are all top. Where you see green, it's best in class, light blue, second best in class, light purple, third best in class, and a gold banner, or colour, sorry, behind the aircraft name indicates that it's a premium or reward aircraft. If we just scroll down gently, we can see that the best in class logic is reversed, using red colours for worst in class. Right, that all said, we ought to take a look at the statistics for the F4F, but before we move up, I just want you to glance at the rating for the guns, 12, dark red, worst in class, but also the cumulative DPS, 228, which isn't even third worst in class. Let's just bear that in mind as we move upwards. So what's going on with these figures? Well, the reason for the rating is not just the cumulative DPS, but the other factors that are combined with it to make an overall figure, and one of those will be the range, and the range is only 1,640 feet. Now, the cumulative DPS is a lot better than the Yak-7, for instance, which is 174, but that's got a higher rating. Well, it's because this 37mm cannon will do damage at nearly 3,000 feet, and it's a similar story for the Lag-3-4 Series 34 with a 37mm cannon, but will do damage at 3,115 feet, even though the overall DPS is an appalling 132. And it's pretty much the same story with anything that has cannons. These aren't sniper cannons, these 20mm on the Yak-7 M82, but they do damage at 2,165 feet, and so do the 20mm cannons on the Focke-Wulf 190A1. It's all about machine guns here. If you can get close enough to something, particularly if you can get behind it and stick with it, then you'll find these guns adequate, even though they're nowhere near best in class. They won't feel like they're worst in class either, even though the overall rating suggests that they are. Just while we're on guns, the multi-role at Tier 5 with the highest rated guns is the Hurricane 2D. I'm just going to say that you don't want to sit in front of one of these at less than 2,000 feet, because if you do, it will wave you goodbye very quickly. Just before I talk about ordnance, let's just quickly glance at the overheat time for the machine guns. 20 seconds, plenty of time to do a lot of damage. And with respect to the ordnance, it's good news. The rating is 12, which is the best in class, and what you have are 6 5-inch HFAR Mark IV rockets capable of doing 6,000 cumulative damage with a 90-second resupply time at 3,346 feet range. Now, interestingly, bombs on the other American multirole, the XP-44 rocket, actually do significantly more damage, 8,600, and they have a 30-second advantage in terms of reload time. However, the rating is also a function of range. You have to be more or less on top of your target to drop bombs, whereas you can destroy a target at 3,346 feet and move on to doing something else, saving time. Similar story with the bombs on the Focke-Wulf 190A, unsurprisingly. As far as the other multi-roles that carry ordnance are concerned, or rockets, either by virtue of having more of them or just by virtue of being playing better rockets that do damage at greater range, this is the best ordnance on a multi-role at tier 5. And what I would recommend you do with the ordnance is try and take out gun emplacements. Now, if you can find 2 gun emplacements in a sector with the bunkers side by side, 3 rockets into the bunkers will definitely destroy them, and then you can take out the gun with your machine guns. You might, if it's a tier 5 battle, and you place your rockets carefully, manage to destroy bunkers that are side by side with 2 rockets. However, I'm not sure you're going to find many sectors with 3 such configured gun emplacements in order to do that. The other thing I would point out is that the resupply time, if you bring this down by mounting suitable equipment, you'll see this rating shoot up. And this is the strength of the aircraft, in my opinion. As far as a multi-role is concerned at tier 5, this ordnance is more than capable. Okay, carrying on, survivability figures are best in class. Rated at 7, and as you can see, there's green for the hit points, the damage resistance and the fire resistance. All of these will help you if you're fighting other multi-roles or light fighters. They're not going to help you if you choose to let yourself get shot by a heavily armed heavy fighter. With airspeed, fairly indifferent figures here. The 10 seconds boost duration is rated as second best in class, but it lags behind something like the rockets and the Focke-Wulfs of 16 seconds. If they got engine cooling, they're also faster, they'll get away from you if you start chasing them. Maneuverability, it's pretty much on a par with most of the other multi-roles, better than the Focke-Wulf significantly. And if you build this aircraft with a lightweight wing frame and a lightweight power unit, then you'll be able to duke it out with the multi-roles and any fighter which has been built for speed rather than maneuverability. Altitude performance, you're going to have a lot of aircraft above you for most of the game. That's no surprise with multi-roles. You'll need to be aware of that at all times. The altitude performance is pretty indifferent. If we look down, we've already talked about gun armament, no need to discuss that any further. We won't discuss survivability, that's a bit misleading. Figures are best in class, but they also happen to be third worst in class, simply because of the compressed nature of the figures across all the multi-roles. Airspeed, there's one worth picking out here. The maximum boost speed is actually worst in class, just emphasising the fact that you're probably not going to be able to run away anything to get away from it. The manoeuvrability figures, well, you can significantly improve the manoeuvrability, but you are going to need skills in order to be competitive if you want to win your turn fights against other multi-roles. And if you don't know how to maximise your turns, you may come off worst against something like even a Yak 7, but certainly a Yak 7 M82, and any turn fighter will have you for breakfast. And the altitude performance, the red there, just indicates that the altitude performance is pretty mediocre. So what's the best way to play this aircraft, in my opinion? You want to maximise the number of times that you can use your ordnance, so bring down the resupply time, and you want to support your GAAs and your bombers in taking sectors of interest to them. You want to knock out enemy GAAs that stray into the same sectors if you can, and the armament will allow you to do that. 20-second overheat is long. You'll do a lot of aggregate damage, even though the cumulative DPS is not best in class. With the survivability, you may very well be able to take on other multi-roles. You're going to need to know how to turn and have built the aircraft for turning in order to do that regularly and reliably. You're probably not going to be able to run away from anything, so you need to pick where you go and before you actually get there. This is not one of those aircraft where you can simply fly into any situation and expect to come out of the other side of it because you're better at, for instance, turning. This is an aircraft that requires thought. And altitude performance, keep an eye on what's above you. So, with all that said, let's go and see how I've set up my Wildcat. Here we are on the tarmac outside my hangar, and I'm going to explain how I've set up my F4F Wildcat, and also suggest that if you're new to the aircraft, you might want to set it up a bit differently. The first thing to notice is that the aircraft is specialised, so I have all of the equipment and consumable slots available to me, and this is what I've done with them. With 0.8 degrees dispersion angle on the machine guns, pretty typical for machine guns in this game, there's no surprises that I've picked a gun sight for the cockpit slot. Here's the interesting choices. The aircraft is pretty sluggish, yet I've opted for a polished skin and an uprated engine. Now, I will be flying this aircraft in such a way that I will pick my routes fairly carefully to try and avoid trouble and to maximise the number of times I can deliver ordnance to flip sectors. If you're less experienced, the chances are you're going to accidentally fall into turn fights, and if you are going to get into turn fights, then it may be a good idea to put a lightweight wing frame here and a lightweight power unit here. And if you don't happen to get into a turn fight with something Japanese or a Spitfire or something down the Yak 1 Russian line, then that may stand you in better stead than the setup I've got here. So think about that. Because I want to deliver ordnance as quickly as possible and as often as possible, I've put on the strength at hard points to reduce the rocket reload speed. Consumables are a standard selection for me. It's a single-seat aircraft, so we have a fire extinguisher. I'll get myself into a tight spot, I might welcome the pneumatic control assist, improving my manoeuvrability for 10 seconds. I've added 10 extra seconds of engine boost, effectively, by using engine cooling. That's assuming you have some boost to use when you deploy it. And I have universal ammunition and improved fragmentation. Both standard choices, no gold here, thank you very much. On the pilot skills, well, I'd still go for aerodynamics expert first, whether you build it for turn fighting, or manoeuvrability at least, as I've just suggested because you're new to the aircraft, or because you've built it for speed as I have. However, if you have built it for speed, then the next choice I think is Engine Guru. If you're going to build it for manoeuvrability, then I would suggest probably Aerobatics Expert would be your second choice, and then followed by Engine Guru. At some point you'll start filling in the Marksman 1 and the rest of the Engine Guru and Marksman 2 skills, although at some point I might very well want to try and pick off Resilience as well. Okay, so we've talked about how I've set the aircraft up. I've also mentioned that if you're new to the aircraft you might want to set it up a bit differently. What we've got are two battles coming up, and the first of them is what I would call a typical scenario for the plane, where you'll see it doing what it's really supposed to do. For this first battle in the F4F Wildcat, we're on the peripheral mission map. It's the Silence of Ice variant, a 5-sector map with in the 5 spots of a die pattern. There's a central forward airstrip, but that's not a repair base, notice, so although you can spawn there, that's the only advantage it confers. Strategically, the 2 mining plants are the most important sectors on the map because they convey the extra resources every 2 minutes, 80 of them, and then there are 2 flanking garrisons just conveying 3 resources every 5 seconds. We look at the order of battle. I'm top tier in my F4F. I have another multi-role, a Russian Premium, and an I-207/4 for company, and against us are a P-40, which is specialised, and a Tier 4 ground attacker, the Focke-Wulf 189C. Now on the face of it, I would say that the enemy team has the advantage here. However, we're going to see how that pans out. As far as my tactics are concerned, I've got a ground attacking capability, and I'm going to try and concentrate on taking this plant first. Possibly consider going to this garrison or this airfield depending on the battle situation. Eventually I'm going to want to make my way to this plant and see if I can get hold of it as well. Well, as I've mentioned in the strategy and tactics section for this battle, I'm off to the plant. So I brake right and lose altitude, since there's only high altitude AA at plants. So if you're low, you can't be shot. I've already mentioned in the numbers section that you can use these rockets on gun emplacements, and if you're careful, you might even get up to 3 gun emplacements. It's much more likely you'll get 2, however. That said, that's not going to do a lot to flip a plant, so I opt for a different tactic here, and I'm going to put 1 rocket into each of these fuel storage units, and then try and finish off this target with my guns. And it's balancing the greater number of hit points that you get from this particular target against the speed with which you could take down a gun emplacement. As you can see, I've done quite a lot of damage, and I've managed to destroy that target successfully. I swing to look for the second instance of the same sort of target, and I miss with one of the rockets. And I would advise you aim carefully, because now it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to knock this target down. Nonetheless, with a little bit of luck and some assistance from the ground attacker, I destroy that target. Now I've got a choice. I can either go away and do something else at another sector, or I can wait for ordnance to reload, or I can look for targets of opportunity, and there's one. Now that can't have taken a lot of damage from the attacks from the ground attackers, otherwise I think I probably would have finished it off. Take the opportunity to take out a gun, swing round again to attack that fuel storage unit. And the equipment, the strength and harden points that I've mounted on this have got the reload time down from 90 seconds to just 77, which is useful, but it does mean that you're going to be having to make a decision about whether you stay in a sector such as a mining plant or whether you need to move on. And whilst we've been taking the mining plant, and I'm glad I came here, because my ground attackers were fairly slow to take it, without my intervention I'm not sure we would have. The enemy have already managed to take their mining plant, the airbase, and a garrison. So our team has made a bad start. Given the airbase has been taken, I decide not to fly through it. Certainly not on my own. That would be basically just throwing my aircraft away. I'm going to try and attack the garrison. I look at the air defence aircraft flying towards my ground attacker. Not sure why they chose to fly away. Perhaps they were just trying to move to get behind it. But all that does is allow me to get behind them. The first of them goes down, and as you can see, as I've mentioned, at close range the guns on this are pretty adequate. A couple of rockets into that bunker, the rest into that pair of bunkers. That's 2 targets taken down here. And now I'm looking to try and take out another boomerang. Evades me, I swing round, and because of my turning skills and because it's an ADA, even though the boomerang is meant to be quite a bit more manoeuvrable than I am, I actually get the better of it. However, we still need to take out a target here. I can see there's only one shed left in this warehouse complex, hoping I can destroy it with my guns. No such luck, so now I have to turn to face the P-40. That was a close run thing. I very nearly lost my aircraft. He tries to fly away, and now I have lost my aircraft to the air defence Beaufighter, which is a bit of a shame. So, in the time that I was waiting to respawn, my team managed to capture the airfield, but not before I could spawn there. So, I decided that I'm going to try and take our local garrison, which my team still has failed to take, and in fact has very nearly lost to the enemy. If I manage to do this, I've then got a straightforward route to the enemy mining plant. Take out an air defence aircraft, then a Focke-Wulf, and now we've very nearly turned this garrison around completely. Looking for the ground attacker I flew past. I use my rockets to take out a ground target, that secures the sector, and I kill the ground attacker. Keep an eye on the airfield to see whether it needs defending. And I decide I'd better do some work there just to make sure I've secured it. And in that time my team has managed to take the garrison that I first assaulted. So now the situation has turned almost entirely on its head, and my team are being the aggressors, as opposed to being on the back foot. And just a few moments ago, it looked as if we were going to be 3 sectors to 2 or even 4 sectors to 1 down. It just goes to show that if you make the right decisions, you can have a pretty significant impact on the game. So now we are heading towards the enemy mining plant. The Hurricane chooses to ignore me. I pretend I'm ignoring it until I am able to turn on it, take nearly all of its health at close range, and then finish it off. Just waiting for my ordnance to reload, and that was a factor in my decision to go to the airfield rather than straight to the mining plant, of course. You see the HE112, which is a lot more manoeuvrable than me in theory, is paying attention to the ground attacker, so I'm probably going to catch it unawares. In fact, I don't catch it unawares, but he flies straight at me, and again, I'm able to use my guns to good effect. I probably missed an opportunity here. I've gone for the same sort of tactic as I did before, trying to take out this particular section of ground target, but there was a gun emplacement, and indeed one of the other complexes that I could have used the rockets on. And there it is, just in the background. I decide not to waste time. I'd decide to finish off this target. I could have used rockets on that building down to the right of me there, so that wasn't particularly observant of me, and I've been a bit inefficient here. Nonetheless, I've got my target. There's still 3 sectors to 2 up. I'm going to stay here and defend it, alternatively use my ordnance when it comes back. And although I wanted to finish off the soft target that was off to the right of me just now, I was aware the HE112 was coming in. I didn't want to get shot down by that. And by killing that, in combination with the bombers above me, I've now got this plant as well. Finish off the Hurricane just to make sure that he can't do any more work, and my team has secured a victory. And although I've been a little bit inefficient about it, generally you get the idea. I've sought to use my ordnance where I can, I've intervened in an emergency where I had to, and those decisions have helped turn a battle that started off pretty badly strongly in our favour towards the end. And that's a 3 chevron battle, and it's 11,000 personal points, and that is on average what you should be aiming for when you play this aircraft. Anything better than that is a really good game. So let's review the outcome of this first battle, and as we can see from the middle, it's a 3 chevron battle, or indeed a grade 3 multi-role fighter if you prefer, grossing 62,992 credits, of which about 21,000 I think I saw there were due to the premium account. I'm correct. We drop into the message box, we can see there are repair costs of 1,850 credits, 3,034 experience with various bonuses, and 151 free XP. Again with a premium account bonus. We drop into the personal score tab. We can see that one of the class specific missions was entirely complete. The second of them was very close to being completed, but there wasn't any defence mounted during this battle, so nothing for the last class specific mission, and that's why we're a fair way off getting to 5 chevrons. Personal points of 11,025. 4 sectors captured. I put the aircraft about quite a bit in the game. 9 aerial targets destroyed with reasonable haul. 1,224 damage to aerial targets with just 6 critical hits coming off the machine guns. Lost the aircraft once. Capture points of 460, which was entirely due to attacking. 6 air ground targets destroyed, and a total damage to ground targets of 16,034. If we go to the team score tab, we can see that was comfortably enough to be first place on the team, both by chevrons and by personal points. The I-2704, an unusual Russian multi-role, a reasonable contribution there. On the other side, good contribution from the P-40. Might quite count yourself a little bit unlucky to have lost the battle, and possibly the FW189C player is still learning his trade. For my second battle in the F4F Wildcat, we're again on the peripheral mission map, but this time it's just a 3 sector map, the harsh times variant. And the airbase in the centre is both strategically and tactically the most important sector on the map. It has the special characteristics of being used as a spawn point, always good in the centre, perhaps slightly less so when it's only a 3-sector map though. Allows you to select a different aircraft of the same tier if you're destroyed, or allows you to get full repairs. It's flanked by a pair of garrisons, which just convey the standard 3 resources every 5 seconds. And although this is the most important sector, it is possible, if the enemy floods that sector, but then camps, to take the 2 garrisons and win the game that way. And that is something I've done on several occasions when enemy players have failed to realise that they need more than one sector to win a game. Taking a look at the order of battle, I'm in my F4F. We have a pair of human bombers, a PE-2 and a Junkers 88A, another F4F, and we have a fairly rare premium American fighter, the F4F3. I probably said that all wrong, but you get the idea. Which is not particularly manoeuvrable, has reasonable good guns, reasonable altitude performance. On the enemy side, there's an XP-44, a pair of ground attackers, IL-2 and Junkers 87G. There's a bomber, a Junkers 88A, and another bomber, a Dornier 17Z. Well, this is frightening in terms of the garrisons. But what I did notice straight away was that I was probably as manoeuvrable as any other aircraft, certainly occupied by a human player, in the game. And normally, in an F4F on this map, I would have gone for the garrisons. Not this time. Let's see how this battle pans out. So it's straight to the centre for me. I'll use my ordnance straight away, but then I'll start dogfighting. And this is not a normal tactic for this aircraft, but I want you to notice that I've made this decision having analysed what's on the enemy team and deciding that this is a viable tactic, even though it's far from usual. I've got to hope my bombers will counteract all the ground attacking capability of the enemy, or I'm going to have to pay attention and go to a garrison and try and take it if I have to. So I take out a ground target. I decide to use the 3 rockets on these buildings. Originally I was intended to swing around and finish off this target, but then I noticed that there's a ground attacker in here, and that's worth more to me. So I set about the Junkers 87G. Spoilers, this won't be the first time you see it. I'm not too surprised that my team have already made so much progress that by shooting down the Junkers 87G, we've secured the airfield. And as it's a repair base, although I've taken significant damage, provided I avoid being shot down now, I should be able to get repairs. And using every inch of my turning skills, I managed to get on the tail of a Yak 7. Finish off, or help finish off an I-16 late modification. Didn't actually get that kill. And then get on the tail of the I-17. And during that time I picked up repairs almost without thinking about it. And I see a ground attacker coming in again. Well, you probably won't be surprised to know that this is the Junkers 87G, who turned out to be pretty stubborn and wanted the airfield. And what he should have been doing is going for the garrisons. Still, that helped me. And down he goes again. And even though I've again taken damage, I'm able to pick up repairs, or potentially, provided I kill this ground attacker before he shoots the central target. If that indeed that's what he's going to do. A lot of hit points on that ground attacker, so I swing round for a longer run at him. He didn't take out the repair base. That's probably a mistake as well. And now I'm using my long burst to be able to do damage to him. And even though I started to overheat, eventually I shoot him down as well. That's the second time I've got assistance on the I-16 late modification. Not allowed to kill that. And now the enemy have done the right thing. They've destroyed the repair section. Fortunately, I'm fairly healthy. I get on the tail of the Yak 7 again and swing around looking for more targets. I can see that we've still got a garrison, so we're in good shape. I don't need to worry about having to go off and take another sector. Well, this ground attacker is coming in again, and you won't be surprised to learn for a third time it's the Junkers 87G. Put a lot into him. He's lost his engine. Whether he'll still be there by the time I get round, I'm not sure. And in fact he wasn't. He got finished off by one of my teammates. And now I'm just waiting for the enemy to come in. The I-16 late modification takes a fair amount of damage from me. Keeps going rather than turn fights. And this is the first time I've managed to kill him. Third time of asking, first kill. I was lucky I didn't take a face full of 37mm shell from what I think was the AK-7 there. It was. And I'm able to shoot him down for what I think is the third time as well. We still have a garrison to the good, so I'm not under pressure to go elsewhere. Would you like to guess what this ground attacker is? Yep, it's the Junkers 87G. 4 times he's come in on exactly the same route. 4 times I've been able to greet him. You might have thought he would have learned something by now. And that's the third time I shoot him down. That's the F2A down. First time I've seen him, and now we have lost the extra garrison. So now I'm keeping a very careful eye. I've got to make a decision whether I want to keep this, stay here, and I do need to stay here just for the moment because the airfield, despite my efforts, is under threat. But I may have to go off and try and take another sector, although it looks as if my team is going to do that anyway. I'll kill the I-17 again. We've now got control of the airfield again. The AK-7 flies across me, the Winged Legend goes through. I'm able to kill the AK-7 for, I think, the 4th time. It's certainly multiple times. Would you like to guess what that ground attacker is? He's got a bit further in and he's changed his route slightly this time, so he's beginning to learn. But it's the Junkers 87G. Now, I didn't actually get the kill there, something snatched it off my nose. But that was certainly the 5th time that I'd had the opportunity to shoot at him. And here comes the other ground attacker. I don't want to get in front of his guns, so I'll go up and round a little bit. That wasn't a particularly good angle of attack, so I reconfigure and reapproach. Here comes some rockets. And it's a rocket kill. And what I did there was I shot into the ground below the ground attacker, and the radius damage blast radius of the rockets did the rest. And he actually says good game there. Well, that's nice of him. Obviously appreciated the move. There goes an F2A again. Turn round, the enemy is still coming in floods. The I-16L goes down for, I think, the 2nd time. I've lost count of how many times I've shot down that Yak-7. If it's not 5, I'll be surprised. First time I've seen this heavy, though. It's a C6 bot. Don't want to be sniped by that, so I'm glad I'm on its tail, and I destroy that. Now, we did take that garrison. We've now lost it again, but we're so far ahead it now doesn't matter, I can stay here. Avoid the ground attacker, that's the one I rocketed. And so he obviously wanted to try and get some revenge, however, I saw him coming, avoided him, and now I'm on his tail. I just saw the Junkers 87 in the background there get shot down. It actually got a lot further into the base than previously. I disposed of the ground attacker, and the game is nearly over. And the lesson of this game is, the aircraft may have a certain function in theory, but just occasionally you ought to modify that in favour of what is in front of you. And that's a lot of medals, and a game at 24,500 personal points in an F4F Wildcat. You don't see those too often. So to review the results of this second battle, it may surprise you that it's only a 2 chevron battle, grade 4 multirole fighter. and we'll see why on the next tab. Grossed 114,811 credits, or silver if you prefer, of which just over 39,000 was due to the premium account. We come into the message box, we can see that there were no expenses, the aircraft wasn't destroyed, no repair costs, and I used prepaid consumables. 2,608 experience with bonuses, 133 experience with a premium account bonus, and a token. And this was for the first medal of the day, the Marseille medal. We drop into the personal score tab, and here's the reason why this is only a 2 chevron battle. Although the destroyed when defending class specific mission is complete and then some, I only needed 8 and I got 15. The other 2 missions depended on attacking sectors, and I did very little of that. I stayed in the centre for the entire battle, thus attacking capture points of 80 and 1 sector captured, nowhere near enough to get these close to completion, and that's the reason for a 2 chevron battle. Nevertheless, that's 24,545 points, 18 aerial targets destroyed, 1 more than needed for the Marseille, 6,425 damage to aerial targets with 20 critical hits coming off the machine guns this time, 680 capture points received, and of course we've already explained that 80 of that was for tracking, therefore the 600 was for defending. Only 1 ground target destroyed on this occasion for 3,093 damage. If we look in the team score tab, we can see that, well, unsurprisingly, the personal points, that was easily enough to be first. Equal first on chevrons. Decent contribution from the F4F-3. That's quite a tricky and difficult aircraft to fly. That's been well flown in this battle. The other F4F didn't do quite as much as me, and our bomber is practicing. On the opposite side, the enemy bomber was effective, 10,000 personal points. Some reasonable contributions here from 2 of the players, and again the other bomber was practicing. And that concludes my look at the F4F Wildcat, the main feature of which is relatively good ordnance, the use of which you should seek to maximise. And whether you build it for speed as I have, or manoeuvrability in order to give you an advantage in any turn fights that you may find yourself in, the key factor with this aircraft is to try and plan ahead in order to maximise the use of that ordnance. Nonetheless, as the second battle in this video demonstrated, occasionally there's a situation where you can tear up the rulebook and play in quite a different style. I hope that you found that useful, and if you did, you'll come back and see my future content. But until then, this is the Noble Q signing out.